Fearless warriors, they adhered to the samurai code of conduct called Bushido, imbued with a spirit of unwavering loyalty to their lord and a disdain for death. If a samurai failed to follow the rules of conduct, he was dishonorably dismissed from the samurai ranks, or he would commit seppuku, often referred to as harakiri in the West. But this is just a drop in the ocean of information about this class of people. So, let's delve into common myths and facts about the samurai. Myths, samurai, as a rule, were relatively poor. Each samurai belonged to his lord and lived only slightly better than the common peasants. Some managed to attain a certain level of wealth, however, the samurai remained, as always, merely a vassal to his master. Moreover, most samurai, in order to feed their families, had to cultivate the land alongside the regular peasant population. The Japanese word samurai translates as one who serves. During wars, the majority of samurai were ordinary foot soldiers, not the commanders giving orders. A samurai was always ready to face death for his lord. The movie The Last Samurai portrayed the samurai with a sort of heroic, romantic aura. In reality, things were far more mundane. During civil wars, numerous samurai would switch allegiances, serving one lord at one time and another lord at a different time. If, during these feuds among minor feudal lords, a samurai became discontented with his lord, he would shift his loyalty to another, without remorse or seppuku, ritual suicide. However, he was bound to obey the orders of his lord unquestioningly, including orders to kill himself or to charge with 10 men against a 1,000-strong army. Incidentally, the latter was a fairly common way to get rid of an unwanted samurai. The only weapon of a samurai was the sword. In reality, this isn't true. A sword alone won't get you very far. Many samurai were also skilled in archery and hand-to-hand combat techniques. By the way, not all of them were such exceptional fighters. Yes, among them, there were certainly true masters of their craft, but not all of them. The Japanese government eradicated the samurai as a class. The story of the persecution of samurai as depicted in the movie The Last Samurai is just another tactic to draw tears from viewers. The fact is that after the unification of Japan, wars almost ceased. And the samurai, as a class, became redundant. It became both unnecessary and unprofitable to maintain them. As a result, many samurai had to quickly retrain as merchants or farmers. This process happened gradually on its own, without the involvement of Western civilization. The samurai possessed a nobility unparalleled among ordinary people. Like any other warriors, especially those not from noble families, the samurai had a mindset quite typical for their time. Yes, they had their code of honor which they followed in battle, but they looked down with disdain upon everyone who was below them in social status. They regarded their enemies, as well as their lower-class compatriots, as something akin to animals. A samurai could easily deceive, betray, or assault if it did not affect the honor of his master. In general, the samurai were not as noble and romantic as popular culture has portrayed them. Wartime required soldierly behavior from them, which rarely exemplifies exceptional nobility. Samurai women. The term samurai is traditionally used only in reference to men. The Japanese Bushi class, to which they belonged, also allowed women to be trained in martial arts. These women were called honor bugeisha and they participated in wars alongside men. Their weapon of choice was usually the naginata, a polearm taller than a person, with a blade resembling a long, curved sword. This weapon was relatively light compared to others and was quite effective. Historical texts suggest that there were few warrior women among all noble women in Japan. Traditionally, Japanese noblewomen were content with the role of homemakers. However, recent research has shown that women participated in combat much more often than is documented in history textbooks. For instance, a DNA analysis of the remains from one major battle revealed that 35 out of 105 belonged to women. Armor. Perhaps the most distinctive attribute of the samurai is their unique, beautifully ornate armor. Unlike the armor of European knights, samurai armor was primarily designed for mobility. Good armor had to be sturdy, yet flexible enough to allow its wearer to move freely on the battlefield. It consisted of lacquered leather or metal plates meticulously laced together with leather or silk cords. The arms were protected by bulky rectangular guards, with a gap left at the elbow bend. The right arm was often left less protected to ensure maximum freedom of movement. The most peculiar part of the armor is the kabuto helmet. The bowl was made of metal strips riveted together, while the face and forehead were shielded by armor tied around the head beneath the helmet. The most popular design resembled the iconic helmet of Darth Vader, which could shield the wearer from swords and arrows from all angles. Many helmets also featured decorative elements and separately attached pieces, including mustache demonic masks called mengu, which simultaneously protected the face and intimidated the enemy. A leather scarf was used beneath the helmet for comfort. While the design of samurai armor underwent significant changes over time, its general appearance remained largely consistent to the untrained eye. In fact, samurai armor was so effective that the US military adopted aspects of its design for their own body armor. Homosexuality. Samurai were unreserved individuals when it came to sexual relationships. Like many other warrior cultures, such as the Spartans, samurai not only considered same-sex relationships normal but actively encouraged them. Sexual relations typically occurred between young apprentices and the master training them. This practice was known as Bushido, the way of youth, and was observed by almost all members of the Bushi class. Although Bushido was seen as a foundational aspect of the samurai path, history has preserved little about it, and this fact is rarely highlighted in popular culture. Western Samurai. Viewers who have seen the movie The Last Samurai are aware that under special circumstances, a non-Japanese could fight alongside samurai or even become one. This was a unique honor that included receiving samurai weaponry and a new Japanese name. Such an honor could only be bestowed by notable leaders like daimyo, landholding lords, or the shogun, military leader. For Western men are known to have received the title of samurai: adventurer William Adams, his partner Jan Jusen van Lodenstein, naval officer Yevgeny Kolak, and arms dealer Edward Schnell. Adams was the most prosperous and influential among the four, becoming an advisor to the shogun himself. Quantity. Many believe that samurai were a small elite force, similar to modern Russian special forces, or a minor, strictly defined noble caste. However, essentially the entire social class of Bushi was composed of samurai. Originally, the word samurai meant those who serve in close attendance to the nobility. Over time, its meaning shifted to be associated with mid- and high-level representatives of the Bushi class, particularly soldiers. This implies that there were quite a large number of these warriors. At the height of their prominence, up to 10% of Japan's population belonged to the samurai class. Thus, at least half of modern-day Japanese citizens likely have samurai blood flowing through their veins. Fashion. Samurai could be called the rock stars of their time. Their clothing style significantly influenced the fashion of that era. However, apart from ceremonial occasions, samurai dressed modestly in their daily lives. Although their daily attire was intricate, each aspect was designed to meet the warrior's needs. The outfit was meant to provide speed and freedom of movement. A typical ensemble consisted of hakama pants and a kimono or hitate, a two-panel vest draped over the shoulders. Weapons were a regular part of their attire, and the hitate could be swiftly discarded in case of an attack. Kimonos were made of silk, providing both a beautiful appearance and coolness. Wooden clogs or sandals were the common footwear. The most prevalent hairstyle was a topknot. Except for Buddhist monks who shaved their heads, people of all classes wore a topknot for centuries. The habit of combining a hair topknot with a partially shaved head likely evolved out of practicality. With a shaved forehead, it was more comfortable to wear a helmet. Weaponry. Samurai employed a variety of weapons. Initially, the weapon of choice was a sword called the T-cut, a slender, reduced version of straight swords, later used by medieval European knights. As weapons technology evolved, samurai gradually shifted to curved swords, which eventually became the katanas. The katana can perhaps be dubbed the world's most famous sword type and is undoubtedly the most iconic weapon of the samurai. The samurai code of Bushido dictated that a samurai's soul resided in his katana, elevating it to the rank of the most vital weapon. Typically, katanas were paired with a daish, a shortened version of the main sword, which symbolized status. Only samurai were permitted to carry daish. However, swords weren't the only weapons in their arsenal. Yumi, or bows, were equally prevalent, as over time personal valor on the battlefield became less valued compared to tactics and strategy. When gunpowder emerged in the 16th century, samurai abandoned bows in favor of firearms and cannons. They preferred the tanigashima, flintlock guns that were popular among the samurai of the Edo period and their retainers. Education. Members of the samurai class were much more than mere warriors. The majority received an exceptional education. While very few Europeans could read at the time, the literacy rate among samurai was extraordinarily high, and they were also schooled in mathematics. Bushido dictated that a samurai should pursue self-improvement in numerous ways, including those not related to martial arts. That's why samurai had a significant impact on culture. They composed poetry, created ink paintings, and were experts in the tea ceremony. All of these were regular aspects of their culture. They also studied subjects like calligraphy, literature, and flower arranging. Physical characteristics. The imposing armor and weapons often make samurai appear as giants, and that's how they are portrayed in modern pop culture. However, this is far from the truth. Most samurai were of short stature. For instance, samurai from the 16th century had a slender, delicate build and stood between 160 to 165 centimeters tall. In comparison, European knights from the same period ranged from 180 to 196 centimeters in height. Furthermore, noble samurai might not have been as pure-blooded as they would have liked to believe. Compared to the average Japanese, their skin was noticeably paler, and they had more body hair. Their profile, particularly the shape of their noses, also had noticeable European resemblances. Ironically, this might suggest that samurai actually descended from the Ainu ethnic group, considered to be lower-class Japanese and often subjected to discrimination. Suicide. One of the most frightening things known about the way of the samurai is seppuku, a ritual also known as hara-kiri. A samurai had to commit suicide if he was unable to follow Bushido or was captured. Seppuku could be either a voluntary act or a punishment, but in any case it was seen as a very honorable way to die. Most people are aware of the field version of hara-kiri, a quick and dirty business. It was necessary to pierce his stomach with a short blade and move it from left to right. In fact, the samurai gutted himself. Usually he was helped to perform the ritual by another samurai, who at that moment cut off the first head, because otherwise the warrior would have died extremely long and painfully. However, the complete seppuku ritual is a much longer and more complex process. It began with a solemn bathing, then the samurai dressed in white clothes and took his favorite food. At the end of the meal he had to put the blade on an empty plate. After that, he wrote the death song, in fact, his last words. When the poem was written, the samurai had to grab the blade, wrapping his hand with a cloth beforehand so as not to cut himself, and cut open his stomach. Of course, during the final part of the ritual, a friend with a sword had to be present, who, when cutting off the head, sought to leave a small strip of flesh in the neck area so that the head fell forward and remained in the arms of a dead samurai. And if the head rolled away to the side of casual viewers, it could mean eternal shame.